Courtroom was already tense when the doors opened and Ice Cube walked in. No announcement, no cameras trailing, just a man with a folder and a mission. For a moment, the room didn't even breathe. Everyone expected celebrity testimony in the Diddy trial, but not this. Not him. When Ice Cube took the stand, he didn't bring theatrics. He brought something far more dangerous, truth spoken plainly. The silence broke the moment he said, "I wasn't invited. I came here on my own. No script, no agenda. Just years of frustration bottled into a voice that no longer needed permission to speak." He didn't raise his tone. He didn't accuse wildly. But what he revealed dismantled the myth of Hollywood in seconds. Cube started with a simple observation. The entertainment world isn't built on merit. It's built on control. You're not invited into the inner circle for talent alone. You're invited because you're useful, obedient, willing to play along. And if you don't, the machine doesn't just freeze you out, it erases you. He painted a picture private parties, backroom deals, mysterious calls, golden circles of power where actors, singers, and icons are subtly, sometimes forcefully initiated. Those who comply thrive. Those who hesitate fall away. The names came out quickly: Jamie Foxx, Oprah Winfrey, Quincy Jones, but Cube wasn't there to gossip. He was there to explain a structure, to describe a pipeline, an arrangement. Jamie, Cube said, was targeted when he started asking too many questions, when he began saying no. The once celebrated actor found his roles disappearing, his name shifting from award lists to gossip columns. Then came the health scare, the medical collapse in 2023 that was never fully explained. Cube didn't point fingers directly, he didn't need to. The implication was thick in the air. This was more than a coincidence, it was punishment. Cube had receipts, voice memos, meeting records, confidential notes passed in whispers over the years. This wasn't conjecture, this was evidence-buried truths uncoiling in a federal courtroom. He then shifted the attention to the system itself. A machine that for decades has chewed up new talent and fed them back to the public, has manufactured icons, processed, programmed, and surveilled. You think you're getting a mentor, he said, but you're getting a handler. The mood in the courtroom shifted. Diddy's legal team whispered anxiously. Jurors leaned in. Even the judge, seasoned and calm, was visibly caught off guard. Because Ice Cube wasn't just accusing Diddy, he was indicting a culture. He described what happens to people who say no, how their careers dry up, how false stories suddenly surface, how concerned insiders begin calling them unstable, uncooperative, and how that kind of coordinated smear isn't accidental, it's strategic. It's punishment disguised as coincidence. Cube's voice hardened. They don't just ruin reputations, they destroy identities, they record you, collect you, then use you. He told the court about the footage secretly taken at parties and hotels and private jets. Cameras hidden, guests unaware. Then blackmail. You ever wonder why so many people stay silent, Cube asked, looking directly at the prosecution. Ask how many got a flash drive in the mail. Ask how many got an anonymous call replaying a moment they don't even remember. The courtroom was still. No one moved. And then he said it. This ain't just about Diddy. This is about everyone who helped him, everyone who watched, everyone who stayed silent. For a brief moment, the trial wasn't about a celebrity anymore. It was about an ecosystem that feeds on fear, that molds public figures into puppets, and discards those who stop dancing. And Cube. He was done dancing as the courtroom remained frozen in stunned silence. Ice Cube pressed forward, not with rage, but with a sobering calm that made every word land like a hammer. This isn't about celebrity, he said. It's about control. And when that control slips, they don't just remind you who's in charge. They reset the entire board. He turned the conversation toward Jamie Foxx, again, not to glorify him, but to illustrate the quiet dismantling of a man who once stood at the peak of his craft. According to Cube, Jamie had been invited into Hollywood's elite, courted by charm, groomed with opportunity, flattered with proximity to power. But as he started to notice the invisible strings, the open doors began to close. It always starts the same, Cube told the jury. Random calls from people you never met, invitations to private dinners, then come the favors. Let me introduce you to someone who can take you higher. But when you get there, it ain't a meeting. It's an assessment. They're testing how much you'll take, how much you'll give. Cube said that Jamie confided in him after one of those dinners. Not fully, never fully, but enough. He told me it didn't feel like advice, it felt like training, like he was being shaped for a role he didn't audition for. That meeting, Cube said, was arranged by Oprah Winfrey, but she wasn't offering a helping hand. She told Jamie, "You're blowing it," and said she'd be introducing him to someone who could help. That someone was Quincy Jones. Everyone in Hollywood knows Quincy, a musical genius, a cultural icon. But as Cube laid out in careful detail, there's another Quincy the public never sees. The one whose influence isn't in records sold or awards won, but in what and who he controls. He's the Godfather, Cube said flatly, not just in music, in silence. According to Cube, Quincy had long been a gatekeeper of a deeper structure. He doesn't make you famous. He decides if you stay famous. The courtroom gasped quietly when Cube said Jamie described that fateful meeting at Quincy's home as something darker. He said it wasn't mentorship, it was a handoff, from one leash to the next. Cube continued with brutal precision. They called it legacy. But what they really gave him was a leash. And it wasn't just Jamie. Cube spoke of other actors, too, in particular, who called him terrified. One told him he blacked out after a party, woke up in a hotel with a contract waiting beside his bed. The other received an anonymous recording of himself footage. He never consented to doing things he didn't remember.
To reveal that his audience
That's not
is
Hollywood,
also
Cube
not
said.
part
That's
of the
extortion.
club. You see, all
he described
the
these
celebs
parties
that are
not
part
as
of the
celebrations,
industry
but as
elites
psychological
also
obstacle
propagate the illicit
courses.
agenda
There's
to
no
their
music, no
audiences.
dancing,
Therefore,
just shadows
they
and
naturally
doors.
make them part of
You
this
walk into one of those
rumor club.
rooms
He
and you don't walk out the
explained that
same.
even though the club wants
He
all
described
the
how celebrities were
influential
filmed,
figures to be under
cataloged,
them,
and
they get
judged.
pissed off
Not
when
for
the
their
big
talent,
fish,
but for their
such as Cube
compliance.
himself,
It
refuses
was like an
to
audition with no script. And if you passed, you became protected. If you didn't, they rewrote your story for you. Cube's tone shifted when he recalled a young singer, he didn't name her, who refused to sign with Bad Boy after one of these encounters. She had everything: talent, momentum, respect. Then suddenly she was difficult, unreliable. Her name disappeared, just vanished. Her label dropped her. Her calls went unanswered. You think that's a coincidence, Cube asked. Nah, that's punishment. Then came one of the most chilling lines in the entire trial. I spent years trying to figure out what Diddy did, Cube said, but the real question is how many people helped him do it. That line reframed everything, because this wasn't just about one man's crimes, it was about a system layered faceless and self-protecting. Cube made it clear it wasn't the actions alone that hurt people, it was the complicity, the silence, the well-connected bystanders who looked away when others were broken. At this point, even Diddy's legal team seemed rattled. The lawyer who had objected to every minor procedural misstep was now frozen, whispering to his client. Diddy himself, still silent. Jaw clenched, eyes fixed on nothing. The judge leaned back, unusually pale. This wasn't testimony anymore. It was reckoning, and it wasn't over yet. Ice Cube let the silence stretch, then he did something no one expected. He stopped talking about others and turned the light on himself. I went to one of those parties, he said, just once. You could feel the tension coil back into the room like a wire pulled tight. Even those who had started taking notes again paused, pens hovering. Cube described it like a scene out of a psychological thriller. No invite card, no address, just a time and a black SUV waiting outside his hotel in the early 2000s. They called it networking, that's what they always call it, he said. The car drove him into the Hollywood Hills through winding roads to a massive gated estate. The gate clicked shut behind him, a sound he said he still hears in his dreams. His phone was confiscated at the door, no cameras allowed, but plenty were watching, he added. Inside, it wasn't glitz and glamour, no champagne, no laughter, just low-lighting, scattered voices and security positioned with military precision. Every corner guarded, every glance calculated, and then those rooms. Closed doors, some cracked just enough to hear something you weren't supposed to. Whispers, breathing, sounds that made no sense in that context. Behind one of those doors, he caught a glimpse of someone he admired, slumped on a couch, eyes open, empty. Across from him, a camera recording, silent, unmoving. That's when I left, Cube said. No goodbyes, no questions, I just walked out. He didn't say anything for years, but the next day he got a phone call, no caller ID, no greeting, just one sentence. We saw you leave. They didn't have to say more, he said. I understood. Cube told the jury that moment changed everything. He could no longer look at Hollywood the same way. Not the awards, not the interviews, not even the smiles. Because once you know the truth, you see the machine everywhere. In the forced public apologies, in the mysterious health breaks, in the sudden career disappearances. Then came the moment that turned the courtroom into something deeper than a legal venue. It became a mirror. You didn't just ruin lives, Cube said, turning to Diddy. You filmed them first. His voice didn't tremble. In fact, with every sentence, it seemed to grow steadier, like each truth he spoke anchored him. You built a kingdom out of silence. You called it success. But it was slavery. You didn't just throw parties. You built prisons. Emotional ones, psychological ones. He turned back to the gallery. To every artist watching this, to every kid with a dream, understand this. Before they hand you the keys to your dream, they'll ask you to give something up. Sometimes your voice, sometimes your dignity, sometimes everything. Then Cube said the one thing he hadn't said all day. I was scared. The room froze. I was scared because I knew what I saw, what I heard, what I was invited into, and I stayed quiet because I thought that would protect me. But silence doesn't protect you. It only delays the damage. He reached into the folder he'd brought and pulled out a photo himself in 1991. Young, hopeful, unscarred. "This was me," he said. Bright-eyed. Thought I could change the game without letting the game change me. Then slowly he tore the photo in half. That version of me, he said, didn't make it. The ice cube standing in front of them now had made it, but he wasn't proud of the silence he'd kept. "You thought everyone was buried," he said, locking eyes with Diddy one final time. "But the silence is broken now." And just like that, Cube stepped down. No wave to the cameras, no farewell. Just a man walking away from a weight he had carried for decades. The courtroom didn't feel like a courtroom anymore. It felt like a confessional. They didn't just hurt people, they rewrote reality. They filmed you breaking, then sold your silence. They disguised cages as opportunities. But Ice Cube shattered the illusion. He didn't just name names. He named the price of fame. And now, the machine isn't broken, not yet, but the silence is. For every aspiring artist, for every person watching and hoping they'll be the exception, ask yourself, what are they going to ask from you? Because in this game, what they offer isn't free. Now you know. The question is, what will you do with the truth?